Hello everybody. It is now 11 o'clock Central Europe time, and we are now starting this webinar about motorists as vulnerable road users. My name is Martinette Ken. Some of you already know me as I am the coordinator of the European Road Safety Charter. Welcome to this very first online workshop organized by the European Road Safety Charter in collaboration with the European Transport Safety Council. You have been more than 100 to register for this webinar, so this shows a high interest for the subject. Before introducing our speakers, I would like to give you a few tips on how you will be able to interact with them during this session. So, on the bottom left side of your screen, you dispose of a chat section, where you can post all the questions that you may have. Nicolas Standage, my colleague from the European Road Safety Charter, will be today the moderator of this chat. He will take note of your questions and forward them to the speakers, and at the end of this workshop we'll try to respond to as many as possible of your questions. In this chat section, he will also publish a few multiple choice questions that will help us to know you better. So you can respond to them by clicking on the button that is just under your username on the screen, the right hand button. If you click on it, you will see that you have several possibilities with letters, so you will just have to choose the letter that corresponds to your response. For example, right now, Nicola is going to ask you a question about from which organization you are coming from. So if you are from an enterprise, you can just click A for company, enterprise, B for public authority, C for association, and D for any educational organization. So you will have a few minutes to respond to these questions. Meanwhile, I'm going to introduce our speakers of today. So, first of all, today Veneta Vasileva will represent the motorcycle industry. And unfortunately, Antonio Perlo has not been able to join us today, so she will speak for both of them. Then Juha Kulmala will speak from his office in the Finnish Transport Safety Agency. And John Chatterton Ross is with us today, and he's from the International Federation of Motorcycles, so he will be able really to make us know the voice of the users themselves. But first of all, Maria Teresa Sanz Villegas will explain the position of the European Commission on the subject. Maria Teresa Sanz Villegas is project officer in the DG Move and the DG Transport and Mobility. She's in charge of the European Road Safety Charter, among a lot of other projects. So, Mrs. Sanz Villegas, I know that vulnerable users are really one of the priorities of the European Commission for the next decade.
Thanks, Martin. And I want to say welcome to all the participants in this webinar. It's an experience that we think it will be very interesting, and this should be also a kind of pilot experience, and if we think it's something that is interesting, most probably we are going to try to use it on the next phases of other projects, and particularly on the charter. So you say that for the Commission is an important priority, the vulnerable users. Of course, it's a priority for the Commission, and it was a priority already on the previous Road Safety Action Plan that finished in 2010. And now we have started with a new Road Safety Action Plan from 2011-2020, and there is one main objective, that is to reduce the number of fatalities in a half. That it was the same objective on the previous plan, and it was one of the main objectives of the Charter. And there we have defined some specific objectives. And one of those was the vulnerable road users. Vulnerable road users mean the users that because of the fitness or because of the transport that they use are more vulnerable than the others. And for this reason, the motorcycles is one of the vulnerable road users. In a traffic in which the majority of the other vehicles are cars, the motorcycles are more vulnerable. So we have planned to introduce one objective in this road safety action plan for them, because we think is one of the main groups that we have to touch. But in that particular case, in that webinar, we don't want to go to see which are the different directives, proposal of legislative actions, because we think what is really important is that all the society, all the intervenients do the best that they can do it. So it's not necessary to wait to see which are the rules or which are the legislative actions. It's that we want to have all the intervenients, the civil society, the companies, and everyone to try to make actions to improve the safety on the roads. So, saying that this vulnerable road users strategy is not isolated, so you can make many different actions to try to increase safety. You can use also the possibilities on the ITS. You can use also the possibilities to on the mobility plans in urban areas. You can use many of other possibilities that is cross around all the different policies. And we thought the road safety charter is one of the possibilities that people that are not professionals on the road safety subject can do different interventions on the health sector, on the education, on the training, to try to have increase on the safety, if I could say. So try to have a better and better roads and safer roads. So.
Thank you very much, Maria Teresa, for this introduction. It's true that a lot of our publics that have registered today are members of the European Road Safety Charter, so they are completely and directly involved in this prevention. Now, I would suggest that we look at the results of our first poll. Just a second.
Go back.
So some of you have not responded, but we can see that the ones that have responded are from companies and also from associations mainly. So this is quite a reflect of our signatories in the Road Safety Charter, in the European Road Safety Charter. Well, now for those who have responded, don't forget to go and delete your answer, because if not it will be taken into account for the next questions. Now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, so Veneta. Veneta Vassilieva is from ASEM, the Association des constructeurs européens de motocycles. Donc in English it would be the Association of the European Motorcycle Industry. I must say that ASEM has been one of the first signatory of the Charter and is one of the few organizations that have renewed twice their commitment to the Charter. Also, a lot of your national members, Veneta, are part of the Charter, also have joined the initiative. So I think this shows a real commitment of the motorcyclist industry towards improving road safety.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, safety is a top priority for the European motorcycle industry, and we are very grateful for this invitation to take part in this event today. I would like to share what are the current challenges and the future perspectives in terms of PTW safety, and this is the industry position. So just a small introduction. The motorcycle industry in Europe It's the association which represents 13 PTW manufacturers, and we have also 17 national associations, also representing small manufacturers and suppliers. In Europe, we have more than 33 million users in European Union, and what is very important is the fact that more and more citizens are using PTWs for commuting. And the second fact is that there is a great disparity between EU member states in terms of safety. But this is applicable not only to PTW safety, but for all road users. What is very important to underline also that the PTW sector is really represents a great diversity of vehicles, of owners and purposes, because some people, they use these vehicles mainly for commuting, other mainly for leisure, and some of them for sport. But all of them are indeed vulnerable road users because they are not protected while car drivers, because of the specificity and the specific characteristics of the PTWs. It is also true that the fatalities rate of the PTW riders are not decreasing at the same speed as all road users and mainly car drivers. But what is also true and very important to understand is that for the last 10 years the number of the PTW fatalities is continuously going down. And it is the share of the PTW fatalities which is increasing in the transport mix, mainly because of the best and good results of the car sector. So what ASEM is doing, as I already mentioned, safety is a top priority for our members. And we have started with MATES. I think more or less more people who are working in this domain know this study. This is the in-depth investigation study on motorcycle safety, which was accomplished in 2004 with the support of the European Commission. And it is still the most important in-depth study available nowadays in Europe. Based on the conclusions of MATES and the results, which helped us to better understand the accident causation, we then created our own safety plan of action. And this plan of action is built upon the integrated approach. The vehicle factor, the human factor, and the infrastructure. And why we do so? Because it appeared that according to the MATES results, in 87% of all accidents, the main causation factor is the human error. Of course, the infrastructure is also contributing, and in very few cases, the problems with vehicles. So we do believe that the improvement of PTW safety, which is one of the main targets of the European Commission for the coming decade, is the integrated approach. And for example, we do believe that training could play a very, very important role. That's why we have our position that we are in favor of mandatory training for all riders. And we thought that this could be really improved with the implementation of the third driving license directive. Unfortunately, many countries decided to go for tests rather than for training. We understand that it is quite a complicated process, but we do insist on this, and we still have this position that mandatory training for all riders, including novice riders, newborn riders, which is a group at a quite high risk nowadays. And then another issue is also the training of drivers, because once more MATES showed us that the perception failure of the car drivers is the main reason for the motorcycle accidents, meaning that very often car drivers do not see or they do not expect the PTW rider. And we believe that this should be also part of the training of drivers, which could complement the improvement of the PTW safety. Of course, all this is associated with some awareness campaigns, with enhanced enforcement, and then working on infrastructure, and last but not least, then working on vehicles, having vehicles with improved safety features, research, and this is what the manufacturers are doing actually. Very briefly, I will also now say what the ASEM members are doing about the improvement of the vehicles. As Martin already mentioned, ASEM committed already in 2004 to introduce the advanced braking systems on the street motorcycle models, and since the first target was achieved, then we renewed our commitment, extending the coverage to 74% by 2015. And it appeared that this commitment now will bridge towards the upcoming type approval EU legislation, which requires mandatory fitting of advanced braking systems from 2017 for all registrations. Another commitment from this industry is the commitment on automatic headlamp on, which was made in 2003. And we do appreciate that it has been enshrined in the upcoming type approval legislation, which will apply from 2014. The industry is working very actively on this aspect because, as I mentioned, the conspicuity is one of the main factors for the PTW safety. In terms of ITS and motorcycles, there are already some driver assistance systems or rider assistance systems on the market, but the industry is confronted with many technical challenges for putting into place the advanced rider assistance systems, which is associated with the specific characteristic of the PTWs, because of the dynamic, because of the different sizes, because of many specific features. Very often people, they tend to perceive the PTW market as one market, but the reality is that the sector is much more diverse than the car sector, which automatically makes the implementation, the configuration of new safety features much more complicated for the manufacturers. But of course they work very intensively on this issue because we believe that the cooperative systems could play a really very important role and could contribute to the improvement of PTW safety. Once more, may show us that in 54% of all PTW accidents occur at an intersection, and this is exactly where the V2V or V2X can potentially address this issue. And it is clear that V2X will progressively appear in cars in midterm, and motorcycle safety could benefit from being included in this connected world. Just a few examples of another safety activities apart from the vehicles. As I mentioned, we are very much in favor of mandatory training, and we have many manufacturers who are providing training as, for example, voluntary training for riders who would like to enhance their safety skills, and we put a lot of accent on the hazard perception, not only on the technical skills, how to ride a motorbike, but rather to be aware about all the road safety risks. Then we had, for example, one very big online campaign showing all the hazards related with infrastructure. We implemented a very big European campaign on protective equipment for riders. We continue working with mates. We implemented also a big helmet campaign. And another example is the European Safer Urban Motorcycling Project. This was a project led by 4 cities, Rome, Paris, London and Barcelona, in which ASEM was very actively participating with other manufacturers and some universities. And I just wanted to show a few examples of concrete outcomes of this project. Like in London, for example, after 2 trials, the city has decided to allow PTW riders to drive in the bus lanes in some parts in London, which contributes to the smooth traffic and improved journey time reliability for riders on the network. Another example is the introduction of the infrastructure trial in Barcelona, 30 kilometers per hour zones, which had a very positive impact on the accident trends. Another main legacy of the project is the action pack, which is very easy to use toolkit. It is created specially for the city authorities who would like to improve PTW safety and to take advantage of all the mobility advantages offered by PTW. So it is very important to integrate PTWs in the mobility plans of the cities, and this has been translated in several languages and it's available also on the Commission on the DigiMove website. For example, the city of Rome has created a new road safety urban plan in 2011, and for this part which referred to the PTW safety, they used this action pack and the good practice guide, which contains examples of more than 150 good practices from all over the world. So I would like to invite people who are participating in this conference and who work in different city organizations or associations, that they could really have a look at the ISAM website, where they could find videos about different initiatives and trials implemented by the cities. They could find the action pack and the good practice guide, which will be translated next year by the European Commission. At the end, I would like to finish my presentation by saying that that's true that the PTW, the motorcycle industry, is doing a lot of efforts and a huge work has been done to improve the safety of the vehicles, but it is not possible to improve safety alone. So we really need the support of all stakeholders, and there is a need of shared efforts in order to create a favorable environment for PTW safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benita, for this very complete presentation. Now we are going to see what have been the response of our last poll. Let's see, Nicolas. So, I must say that most of the people that have responded think that the main cause of the accident are the user's behaviors. I remind you that it's important for you to respond clicking on the icon just under your username, because if not, your responses are not taken into account in the results. This is a very good introduction for our next speaker, Juha Kulmala. So I will introduce him now. Juha is from the Finnish Road Safety Agency. He will introduce himself better, but I can say that Juha is an inspector working with quality and development among driver training and driver examination. So Juha, what can you tell us about motorcyclist behavior?
Yes, I saw it.
very complementary, the three. Thank you very much, Yuha. It was very interesting. We've had a question for you, but we will respond to him. You will respond to him at the end of this workshop, as the time is advancing quite quickly. We have now the results of our last poll. So it's quite interesting, I think, because when we ask you which are the greatest challenges faced by motorcyclists in terms of road safety, really most of you respond to raise awareness of car drivers and to adopt a safer driving culture among motorcyclists. So I think it's interesting to see that you are not so much focused on infrastructure or on vehicles, but more on the behavior of both car drivers and motorcyclists. I will now introduce our last speaker for today. This is John Chatterton-Rose. You're the Director of EU Public Affairs in FIM, the International Federation of Motorcyclists. I think your federation is carrying out a lot of activities to improve road safety of your users.
Yes, thank you very much. Today I'm going to give a little narrow range really on some of the things that are more connected with our sporting activities, where we are trying to relate the two to road safety. And I noted a question from Southern Europe, so if we can start off with that. The next slide, please, yes. This is a campaign in the island of Crete, and it is related to crash helmets. And there's a very specific reason for this. We're very interested in trying to get some really big wins, get the numbers of casualties down. And we know very well that there are helmet laws across the whole of the 27 states of the European Union, but they're not followed in every single place. So the partners here, the originators of the campaign, obviously in Greece, the FIA Foundation and ourselves. The FIA Foundation have a particular interest in this because they are campaigning for helmet use worldwide, and they regard Crete as a very good example because we can do some really detailed study as it's within an island setting. Now, the purpose of this is not to confront those people who don't do as they should do, but to identify, and this was done with the help of teams of volunteers, riders who do the right thing. So I put it there quite clearly: wear the crash helmet and do up the strap. And then in exchange for that, we arrange media coverage and a monthly draw, so that people who were identified, we got their email addresses, and it was a monthly draw, and they could win a new helmet from AGV, one of the sponsors. And then at the end of the year, a grand prize, which was an all expenses paid trip to a MotoGP race. You can imagine we got some pretty nice coverage back in Crete. The winners could hardly believe, oh yes, it's nice to have a ticket to go to a MotoGP, but I can never afford to go. No, you don't worry. All the airfares, the hotel, and the reception is covered. So that's just an example of one small campaign. And in concluding on this particular one of the reasons for this is our membership of the European Transport Safety Council. And they've said it's about time we got back to some of the basics like seatbelts and helmets, because we imagine we've solved these problems when in fact we haven't. And that is sort of summarised on this next slide. It's the culture that needs changing. Enforcement alone is not enough. There are weaknesses in the enforcement as well, and maybe there are things that we can do about that with maybe some peer mentoring from one police force to another. That's something that we will look at with the partners next year. Other priorities in road safety, already been mentioned, low-cost infrastructure improvements. The improvements to motorcyclist safety with roadside barriers is very much pioneered in Spain. A particular mention, now I have to say this is not something that FIM can take credit for. This is an independent organisation in Norway, a member of FEMA, another motorcycling organisation based here in Brussels, NMCU, where working with the government and highway engineers, they've sought to introduce a safe system of roads, specifically relating it to motorcycle safety on part of the road system in Norway. Is an excellent example of good practice. Training priorities, they've already been mentioned, and Vanita mentioned earlier the increased use of advanced braking systems, particularly anti-lock braking systems on many more motorcycles and scooters. That's great, and we applaud the industry and the legislators for doing that, but we don't believe that we will get the full benefit of this until we take account of improving road safety training. Because at the moment, the kind of emergency stop you do when you practice emergency stops is pretty low speed stuff. With this modern technology, the anti-lock braking system, you can start training on the training grounds at much higher emergency braking speeds. We also use the sport as a platform for road safety projects. The ROSA project was hosted at a number of MotoGP races, so that was a nice place for the road engineers to come and do their conferencing, and also the opportunity to engage directly with spectators at these events. Just very quickly, when we were working with other partners to plan the ROSA project, these are the figures from 2009, and you can see the relevant one here is 2.3 million people attend our MotoGP events. That's spectators that actually come to the race circuits. The TV audience is obviously much bigger. World champions as role models. This is the European Parliament in Strasbourg. The yellow badges, you can see. I'm ashamed I should have put mine on this morning. On the right is Christian Saron, former motorcycle world champion from France, very active working with young people in France, a very articulate spokesman, and on the left there is a member of the European Parliament, MEP Van der Kamp. So, why do we use some of our sports stars as role models? It's not a job that every ex-sports star or current sports star wants to do. People have different skills and attitudes. But in the case of really exceptional personalities like Christian, he can engage very effectively with politicians. And it's interesting for them to meet a guy who's a world champion. Then the FIM Road Safety Award. Oh, it's very Spanish this morning. Yes, this is the second winner from last year, Andres Perez Rubio, very well known in Spain for his work, as I mentioned, on low-cost infrastructure, on the safety barriers, and also with the ROSA project that I mentioned earlier. We're coming up to the third edition. It's a secret, so I'm not going to tell you who's won this year's award, but they will be presented with it at a grand ceremony in Monaco, alongside the world champions of sport. When they get their award, the road safety winner gets their award as well, and this will be televised. So if we go to the next slide, this is just about the TV for the final gala ceremony. Next slide, please. And again, you can see the very large number of countries that will receive this broadcast. Finally, all of the above and more. Sports skills, we believe, can be used to improve road safety. So this is using sport, but it's actually funny. It's difficult to describe because it's actually nothing to do with sport. If we go to the next slide, these guys are not off-road racing people. They're ordinary street riders who are doing a little bit of very gentle off-road riding, so that when stuff happens back on the road, they won't be so surprised by it, because you can do things at low speed very, very safely here. If you look at the third rider there, he's got the wheels sliding really well on the gravel there. It's going to be far less frightening if in an emergency the back wheel slides a little bit. You realise there's nothing to panic about if you've done some of this training. And it's no surprise that professional police officers, when they're training to ride motorcycles, they will often have part of their course here doing a bit of off-road work. Having said all that, this, as you look at it, you would think that's a racetrack. Well, it isn't. It's a magnificent road safety facility. It's just for the training of car drivers and motorcycle riders. And this is going to be the venue of our next major FIM road safety event next year, Stockholm in Sweden. So you've got, on the outside it looks a little bit like a racetrack, but then on the inside you've got sections which replicate the conditions out on the road, you know, roundabouts, junctions and so on. So in perfect safety there you can develop skills. And literally tens and tens of thousands of Swedish riders go there because rider training has become the sexy, fashionable thing to do in Sweden. Everybody wants to do it. A few tricks have been played, like removing the word road safety and calling it SMC school or cornering school or other things. But anyway, we think that's going to be a great venue for 3 days. And the last slide. As I've explained, not a track, but a specific venue. And if you need to know more, here are my contact details. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, John, for this presentation. I think it has been very complementary with the presentation before. Now we have a few minutes for questions. Before this, I will present the result of our last poll. So, Nicolas, so we've seen that most of you have responded the D response. So you think that all the different activities could be useful to promote road safety. Thank you for having responded to all those polls. Now I will introduce Nicolas, that will tell us a little bit of what has happened on the chat section during our workshop. So Nicolas, can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Hello everyone. I have some questions from some of you towards the speakers. I'll begin with this one. To what extent do you believe road marking and road signaling influence road safety? Towards everyone, sorry.
Yes, I think the road structure itself informs a great deal of behaviour. So a safe system road, where it's clear that this is a residential area and everything is marked in the right way, has a psychological effect, a definite effect on the way in which road users behave. I think this is well proven. You see very good examples of it in the Netherlands, for example.
Okay, thank you.
And one more question for Veneta this time. What about the situation in countries in Southern Europe, where due to better weather conditions, the problem of fatalities from power two-wheelers is greater? Is there a more targeted effort?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, but we know also that the user behavior is also has some cultural elements, and we all know that the road safety in general is not at this good level as in Western European countries, and maybe the good climate is also contributing to this. It is also true that some of the moped and motorcycle riders are not willing to wear helmets and protective equipment, exactly due to the fact that it is quite hot in these countries. But once more, I would like to underline that the industry is producing the same vehicles. So we have the same vehicles all over Europe, but despite this fact, we have very different results in terms of safety. And once more, this is very important that all major players should join forces to improve PTW safety. And we could not expect that the PTW industry could do it alone. So we really would like to invite all stakeholders to work together to improve PTW safety.
Thank you very much for those two responses. If you have other questions, feel free to post them. There's one more, sorry. There's one more question, so Nicolas, can you?
Okay, I think the next question is for John, and was regarding the campaign in Crete. The question is, what was the budget for this campaign, and if there's a possibility of developing countrywide campaigns similar to this one?
I cannot answer the question on the budget off the top of my head, but this campaign is not an isolated one. The purpose of the Crete campaign was to go more in depth on this kind of work, to see what we could learn and validate it. The original campaign on the helmet wearing comes from Vietnam, where allied to enforcement and the new availability of a tropical crash helmet, Vietnam has seen more than a 1/3 reduction in fatalities. So our view is if this can be done in a Southeast Asian nation like Vietnam, it can be replicated in other parts of the world with similar economic conditions. And that's why Crete was chosen, because there's a bit of a crossover between Crete and other parts of the world, in the sense that it's a very, very beautiful place, but also it has quite difficult infrastructure. It's one of the reasons why tourists go there, because the roads are so beautiful. But whoever's asking, feel free to email me and we can talk much more about this.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. We are arriving at the end of this webinar. I think this has been very instructive. Thank you for being within the public. Thank you to our 4 panelists, 4 speakers, and 3 of them being with me here, and you are from Finland. All the presentations that have been shown today will be in our website, so don't hesitate to join us in erscharter.eu. Where you are joining us also here, you can take advantage to ask for more questions, and we will try to respond to you as much as possible. And we are still in contact with our speakers, so it will be interesting to make a follow-up of this workshop. If you join our website, please take advantage to participate to our Facebook campaign, which is a campaign that we are making towards citizens to make sure that road safety is not forgotten in the next months by nobody. So we are looking for people to take the pledge for road safety. Now, I will just have to remind you that this afternoon at 2 o'clock Central Europe time, we will have our next webinar about training, how to optimize training programs. And then we are sorry we had to postpone for the reason of the availability of one of our speakers, our webinar on media and road safety. But this will take place at the start of December. As soon as we have a final date, we will write personally to all the people that have registered for this webinar to indicate the new date. Well, thank you again for your attention. Thank you for your participation, and see you in 2 hours for the ones that have registered for the following webinar.